In our last episode, we left Thor at the absolute edge of the abyss. The woman who promised to teach him how to laugh and cry again, the legendary Cadsuane Melaidhrin, had watched her grand design go up in flames. The Domination Band incident was more than just a tactical failure. It was a spiritual catastrophe. When Rand reached out to the true power, the dark essence of the great Lord himself, to shatter his collar, he didn't just free his body. He cauterized his soul. He didn't become the flexible, human leader Cadsuane envisioned. He became a ghost made of shadow and cold steel. He became Darth Rand. And in his eyes, Cadsuane was no longer a mentor or even a nuisance. She was a failure, a relic of a broken tower to be banished under the threat of immediate death. For the first time in nearly 300 years, the indomitable Cadsuane Melaidhrin was helpless. Her tactical humiliation had backfired so spectacularly that it threatened to hand the world to the Dark One on a silver platter. But today, on As You Wish, we are going to argue something that feels impossible. We are going to show you how Cadsuane's greatest failure was actually the only thing that could have saved the world. We are going to deconstruct the failed plan and witness the ultimate redemption of the most divisive Aes Sedai in history. This is the story of how the dragon found his heart and why Cadsuane Melaidhrin, despite every mistake, was right. Chapter 1. The Reign of Darth Rand and the Humbling of a Legend. After the horror of killing with his own hands while enslaved by the male Adam, Rand entered a state of being that defines the darkest chapters of the series. This is the era of Darth Rand. He no longer ran from the madness of Lews Therin. He became a singular, terrifying entity of cold logic and zero empathy. He walked through the world like a black hole, consuming light, hope, and the loyalty of those around him. He believed that to win the last battle, he had to become so hard that even the Dark One could not find a crack to exploit. And what of Cadsuane during this dark reign? This is perhaps the most human and vulnerable we ever see the Green Sister. For centuries, she had been the master of her environment. She had never known a problem she couldn't solve with a sharp word, a clever weave, or the sheer weight of her reputation. But now, she was banished. She was forced to follow Rand from the shadows, hiding in his wake like a disgraced servant. This period is a crucial psychological study. To save the world, Cadsuane had to lose her pride. She had to accept that her bully with a plan persona had reached its absolute limit. She had to watch as Rand committed atrocity after atrocity. Think of the destruction at Meridian, where Rand stood against an army of shadow spawn, not as a savior, but as a harvesting machine. Think of his cold-blooded elimination of allies who dared to question his trajectory. The friction Cadsuane had created had turned into a wildfire. Rand was no longer hard like iron. He was dark like the void. He was using the true power, the very essence of the Dark One. And every time he reached for it, the stone Cadsuane tried to break only grew thicker. She realized, perhaps too late, that she couldn't humiliate a man who no longer felt shame. She couldn't teach a man who believed he was already at the end of all things. She was a legend reduced to a spectator. But it was in this state of total helplessness that her true value began to manifest. She didn't give up. She didn't flee back to the safety of the White Tower or retire to a quiet farm. She stayed in the friction. She stayed in the fire. She became the silent witness to his descent, waiting for the one moment where the stone might finally crack. Chapter 2. The Philosophy of Failure. Why the plan had to break. Now we must ask the most difficult philosophical question in the entire Wheel of Time. Did Cadsuane's failure actually cause Rand's epiphany? Think about the nature of the plan. Cadsuane wanted to teach Rand to laugh and cry by exerting control. She wanted to be the one to guide his hand. But Thor was a man who had been controlled by prophecy since the day he left the Two Rivers. He didn't need another master, he needed a mirror. Cadsuane acted as a harsh, unforgiving mirror. By pushing him to his absolute breaking point, she forced Rand to reach a state of total exhaustion. This is a concept we see at high-level trauma recovery. Sometimes, the ego must be utterly destroyed before the true self can emerge. If Cadsuane had been a kind mentor, if she had been like Moiraine's later iterations or like Min's gentle comfort, Rand might have felt protected, but he would never have been forced to confront the monster in the mirror. He would have stayed hard because he felt he had something to protect. Cadsuane's failure provided the necessary resistance. You cannot forge a masterpiece of a blade without both the hammer and the anvil. Cadsuane was the anvil. She didn't move. She didn't break. Even when he threatened her life, she stood her ground. She just sat there and let Rand strike her with his rage and his true power weaves, until he finally realized that he was the one breaking, not her. This is the hidden wisdom of the Aes Sedai. Sometimes, the only way to save a man is to let him fail so completely that he has no choice but to change. Cadsuane's arrogance was the only thing strong enough to survive Rand's descent. Any other woman would have been killed or would have fled in terror. But Cadsuane stayed. She was the one constant in his life that his madness couldn't erase. She provided the friction that eventually ignited the spark on Dragonmount. Chapter 3: The Dragonmount Epiphany and the Birth of Zen Rand. Everything led to the top of Dragonmount. Rand stood there with the access key to the Choedan Kal, the most powerful weapon ever created by human hands. He was ready to end the cycle of the wheel. He was ready to destroy existence itself to stop the endless loop of suffering and reincarnation. But in that moment of ultimate darkness, at the very peak where Lews Therin had once created a mountain out of his own grief, Rand finally broke. But he didn't break into pieces. He broke into peace. He realized that the reason we live again is to love again. He realized that the stone he had become was a lie he told himself to survive. When the clouds parted and the sun finally shone on the Dragon Reborn, he came down from the mountain as Zen Rand. The transformation was absolute. But look closely at the first thing he does. Look at who he seeks out. When Zen Rand met Cadsuane again, the dynamic had shifted in a way no one expected. He didn't kill her. He didn't even mock her for her failed plan. Instead, he looked at her with eyes that had seen the beginning and the end of time and said, "You may call me Rand all Thor." This was the ultimate victory for Cadsuane, though it looked nothing like she imagined. She hadn't won the argument through her bullying. She had won because the man she wanted to save was finally back. The stone had shattered, and the soul underneath was radiant. Rand finally understood what she had been trying to do. He understood that her bullying was a desperate, clumsy, but honest attempt to keep him tied to the world of men. He forgave her, not because her methods were perfect, but because her intent was pure. She was the only one who didn't let him become a god in peace. She was the only one who kept reminding him that he was just a shepherd from the two rivers who was very, very tired. She was the friction that kept his soul from sliding into the void. Chapter 4: The Last Battle and the Ultimate Sacrifice. In the final act of the story, we see a new version of Cadsuane. She is still the formidable Green Sister, still arrogant, still demanding. But she has become the backbone of the dragon's logistical and spiritual support. She becomes his advisor in the truest sense of the word, not a master, but a partner in the salvation of the world. During the last battle, Cadsuane managed the impossible. While the world was literally tearing itself apart, she coordinated the Aes Sedai, managed the chaos of the battlefield, and kept the focus on the singular goal, the boar. But her greatest contribution was during the final confrontation between Rand and the Dark One. While Rand was fighting a war of philosophy and alternate realities within the Pit of Doom, Cadsuane was fighting a war of blood and steel outside. She stood as a sentinel. She was the guardian of the hero's physical body, while his soul was battling the personification of evil. And then, the ending, the final switch. When the world thinks Rand all Thor is dead, when the funeral pyre is lit, it is Cadsuane who sees the truth. In the very last pages of A Memory of Light, she watches a stranger walk away from the funeral, a man who can no longer channel the one power, but who can simply will his pipe to light. She sees him. She knows. And for the first time in the entire series, we see Cadsuane Melaidhrin truly satisfied. She didn't need the world to thank her. She didn't need the White Tower to crown her Amerlin, though she eventually took the seat to save the tower one last time. She just needed to know that the boy lived. She had saved the man inside the hero, the legacy of the necessary evil. So what is the final verdict on Cadsuane Melaidhrin? Was she a bully? Yes. Was she arrogant beyond belief? Absolutely. Did her methods almost destroy the world by pushing Rand into the arms of the true power? Quite possibly. But she was also the only person with the strength of character to stand in the path of a living god and say, no. She was the only one who realized that winning the last battle meant nothing if the winner lost his humanity in the process. Cadsuane's true triumph was not the victory at Merilor. It was the fact that when Rand all Thor walked away from that mountain, he was a man who could feel the wind on his face and the love in his heart. She had broken the dragon, but she had forged the man. In the end, Cadsuane Melaidhrin is the answer to a question we all face. How far would you go to save someone who hates you? Her answer was to go all the way to the end of the world, through the fire of banishment and the shadow of failure, just to see a shepherd smile one last time. If you followed us through this two-part journey into the heart of the Wheel of Time, thank you. Cadsuane is a character who reminds us that the truth is often uncomfortable, and the people we find most abrasive are sometimes the ones we need the most to keep us from falling. What do you think? Was Cadsuane a necessary evil, or just an arrogant relic of a bygone age? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the legends that shape our favorite worlds.